I was startled awake only to find the lights already on. My service dog, my partner, and my lifeline, my friend, nudged my arm and handed me a cold bottle of water. I hugged the cool container to my chest, rocking slightly as she jumped into bed with me and laid across my legs. Abandoning the water, I wrapped my arms around her as her soothing weight began to settle my nerves. She gently licked my cheeks, and I whispered into her fur, "Thank you for being there." As someone who has many family and friends that suffer from PTSD, most of them being veterans, I completely understand the effect that service animals, and dogs in particular, the effect that they can have on people struggling with PTSD. And I decided to read this quote, and to start with this quote, so I could show just one example of how animals can be of help in a time of need. Studies show that 11 to 20 out of 100 vets suffer with PTSD, which is quite a large number when it comes down to it. PTSD is described by Richard Ninemeyer as a psychological response to extreme trauma that involves long-term, persistent changes in mood, which tend to be depressive, behavior, which tends to be aggressive, and experiences such as night terrors, terrible flashbacks, etc. Veterans are a lot of times given medications and sent to therapy for different treatments such as EMDR, which all three of these things will help with the side effects of PTSD, but they never eliminate the problem. So when it comes to service animals, does it hurt to have one more thing that could just help take some of that away? I feel it's important for vets, for their families and their friends to understand the effect that a service animal can have on this person suffering with PTSD. And also the process of adopting one of these animals or one of these dogs. I wanted to give you guys a brief history on service dogs. And the first dog guide school opened in 1929. It was called the Seeing Eye. I thought that was very clever, so very creative. In 1996, service dogs moved from just being for people affected by blindness and deafness to also being for people who suffer with autism. So service dogs for vets, that actually did start in 1945, but until 1990, these dogs were not allowed in public areas. So the American Disabilities Act in 1990 changed that to allow dogs to be able to go in public with their owners, which makes sense since that's their entire purpose, is to be with them. So now that we know some about the history, I'll tell you how service dogs have and continue to help veterans with PTSD. Purdue University Center for Human-Animal Bond did a study in 2018, so very new study, that said psychological impact on 73 veterans measured cortisol level right when waking up and compared it 30 minutes later after the dog came in. So they had an uptake in cortisol level with the dog rather than the dog not being there. So they found that dogs can lower the severity, not cure, of course, but lower the severity significantly. And they also said that 22% of veterans had higher life satisfaction than those with no service dog. And if any of you are animal owners, which we all here are, we can attest to the fact of how much joy they bring to our lives, just in our everyday lives, not to mention, on whether we're having a bad day or, how much they improve those bad days for us. So there's multiple ways that they help. Training is one of them. They know when someone is having a difficult time or experience. Then the veteran can focus on that animal and nothing else, and just kind of block everything else out, and just have the animal be the main focus for them. There are also dogs that are trained to be what's called a blocker or stopper. So it helps keep space between the vet and other people in public spaces. So if they're a blocker, then they will go and they'll go a foot behind the veteran and keep people, away from their backside. And to be a stopper, they'll go a foot in front and sit in front of them to prevent people from coming too close to them in the front. There are a couple of different ways that a veteran can obtain a service dog. Though many studies have been done, the VAs have deemed their findings inconclusive, which VA is a tricky one. Until this year, veterans needed to go through a private business to obtain a service dog. So a company like the Seeing Eye, like the first one that started this whole thing. But now there's a new pilot program. It's no charge, and you just contact the VA and you submit an application. Still can be kind of a timely process because the VA runs a little slow, but trying to work out the kinks, but it's still able to be done at no charge. So a lot of times the VA will still rely on outside organizations to provide dogs that are trained and ready, just because they're there and they're available and accessible, and so the VA will cover those fees. So, in conclusion, service dogs have a long history of being beneficial to a variety of people with disabilities. In the past, it was only physical, and today they're able to travel with their owners wherever they're needed, and help with their psychological needs, which, a lot of times, the emotional part is, maybe even more important than the physical part. So what a blessing. Veterans who have served our country deserve to come back home and live the life that they've dreamed of. Returning home to, for more, we want them to be living in the most comfortable way that is possible for them. It's wonderful that the VA has started to provide veterans with service animals with PTSD. So, thank you all.